Welcome back, beautiful people. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Now, up in just a few, we have the Scandals segment with Imran Ansari of Idala Bertuna Commons, otherwise known as ABK Law, right here in New York City. We're going to be chatting about the ongoing legal battle involving the death of Ahmaud Arbery. Now, he was shot on February 23rd, 2020, in a confrontation with a father-son duo, Gregory and Travis McMichael. It took more than 2 months for the men to be arrested, along with their neighbor who filmed the death. Lawyers for Mr. Arbery's family have called his death a modern-day lynching. The McMichaels argue that they were defending themselves while trying to make a citizen's arrest. Here's what we know so far. They each face 9 charges, including murder and aggravated assault. They pleaded not guilty and deny any racism. Yet, prosecutors have argued racism was a key factor in this case. In her opening statement, lead prosecutor Linda Dunikoski told the jury all 3 of these defendants did everything they did based on assumptions, not facts, not evidence. And on November 8th, the jury saw footage from police body cams in the moments just after Mr. Arbery was killed. Prosecutors used the video in court in an effort to undermine the defense's argument that the 3 men were simply trying to detain Mr. Arbery. Now, despite protests from prosecutors, only 1 Black member is seated on the 12-person jury. Defense lawyers ruled out some African-American candidates for the panel, for that panel, citing that their possible preconceived bias on the case was under questioning. Now, the defense has employed a 2-part strategy: citizen's arrest and self-defense. It was obvious that he was attacking me, that he had gotten the shotgun from me. It was a life or death situation, is what Travis McMichael told the court. But here to break it all down is legal contributor and expert Imran Ansari. Welcome back, my dear friend. What another scandal we have on our hands.
Yeah, Zen, thank you for having me. Always great to be on the show and break down legal news with you.
Gosh, what is happening here? They're currently deciding the fate of these 3 men who could possibly be facing life in prison. Tell me what's going on, Imran.
Yeah, so Zen, there is really some tremendous legal news happening right now. We are fresh off the Kyle Rittenhouse trial verdict, and what you have here is the trial of Ahmaud Arbery, and you gave a great synopsis as to the background here, Zen. And really, these 3 defendants, they are claiming self-defense, and they are saying that they had the right to do what they did. Based on a citizen's arrest and self-defense. This is a tremendously different case, though, than Kyle Rittenhouse. Here we have the defendants pursuing Ahmaud Arbery, an African-American. Ahmaud Arbery is essentially retreating, running down the road, and you have them all in 2 pickup trucks following him. So we have what prosecutor Linda Dunikoski has had as a theme during this trial. She is arguing that the defendants decided their actions based on assumptions and driveway decisions, meaning A, they didn't have the right to do a citizen's arrest because they didn't see Ahmaud Arbery committing any sort of crime. And then B, they don't have the right to say self-defense because they were pursuing Ahmaud Arbery while he was trying to retreat, and therefore they could not use the deadly force. Right now, the jury is going to get this case. We are leading into Thanksgiving holiday. I think they're going to be deliberating, but it's really a case which is going to say a lot in terms of race relations because it's heavily infused with the dynamic of race, and also more polarizing of the nation, as we saw in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial.
This is what's troubling to me is that, so Mr. Arbery was out for an afternoon jog, right, in Brunswick back February of last year, and one of the McMichaels, I think it was the father, he was a neighborhood resident. He saw a Black man running down the street, and then he pursued him. I mean, right there, racism is playing into this, because if he was a white man running down the street, chances are their reaction would have been very different. So where do you think this case is going to end up going in terms of this, because it's so heavily racially charged? Do you think that after coming off this Rittenhouse case, and where a white man was on, basically on the stand, and he essentially was exonerated of every single of everything. Maybe it's because he was white. I don't know. Where's the parallel here?
Well, Zen, again, they are different cases. There are some parallels in the sense that they're two very polarizing cases for the nation. But the Arbery trial, you really can't sort of separate the race factor here. And what's interesting is that the defense attorneys have made comments which arguably sort of are towing the line of racial innuendo. For example, Kevin Goff, who is the attorney for William Roddy Bryan. He was the individual who was following the McMichaels in his pickup truck and filmed that infamous video that went viral and which is part of this case as evidence. His attorney has made comments that we don't need more black pastors in the courtroom when Reverend Al Sharpton was in there and also Reverend Jesse Jackson. And then yesterday, in summations, you had the attorney for Gregory McMichael. She made a comment that about Ahmaud Arbery's dirty toenails. And people are saying that is also racially tinged, making some allusion to slaves and that the fact that they were working in the fields. So there's a lot of racial inferences in this case. And I think that the verdict, we're going to have to watch how that plays out. But this is really something which, again, is very polarizing. But I think that the prosecution has a much better case here, and they're putting on a better case than the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. I think the prosecution is hitting home that this was based on assumptions and driveway decisions, not hard evidence and real facts that the McMichaels knew, and that they were not justified in taking Ahmaud Arbery's life.
Agreed. And what's the law in Georgia? I mean, under the citizen's arrest law, an individual could detain someone they had seen committing a serious crime, and if the suspect was trying to escape. I mean, the state law, which dates back to the American Civil War era, was repealed in the wake of the incident. And Georgia was also one of only 4 states at the time with hate crime statutes, and hate crime legislation has since been passed into effect. So you do have a lot, this case is not just your average. Like you said, it's tying into it's playing into a lot of emotions. It's definitely playing into the race card. And I think based on where our climate is, where we are these days, I think all of this, like you said, the comments, the racially charged, descriptions, the insensitivity, all of that is going to come into play, because I just don't see personally how these 3 men get off the hook. I just don't see it. The man was not armed walking down the street. He was black. He was running. It paints a picture that I don't even want to talk about anymore, because it's clear as day in just a matter of moments of understanding where this is going.
Yeah, no, Zen, I mean, you have it on video, right? And it was William Roddy Bryan, one of the defendants, who filmed the whole thing. And the video is very telling. In order to, that self-defense argument, there needs to be a fear of that there's going to be deadly force used against the one who is now claiming self-defense in their actions of taking a life. Here you have Ahmaud Arbery retreating. They are following him. The whole citizen's arrest aspect and that argument by the defense, well, the prosecution is arguing that falls flat because, again, they had no real proof that Ahmaud Arbery committed any crime. So they can't alleviate themselves from that citizen's arrest or with that citizen's arrest argument. And then that goes out the window. Then the pursuit of Ahmaud Arbery and the killing of Ahmaud Arbery, then the self-defense aspect of that action also may go out the window.
Oh, without a doubt. Look, the defendants assumed Mr. Arbery had committed a crime, and they tried to unlawfully detain him without legal authority. You can't create the situation and then say, I was defending myself. All 3 defendants had made their decision because Mr. Arbery was black, and he was a black man running down the street, period, in the end. I mean, this case seems to be a layup here.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the prosecution is arguing, Zen. The jury will have the case, and they will make that ultimate decision. But I think that the prosecution has painted out a great case for the prosecution. They got to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt, show that it's not self-defense. And I think they're really leading this jury down that path. But again, as a trial attorney, I can tell you juries have surprised me countless times. We all say this as trial attorneys. You never really know until they come back with that verdict.
Well, obviously, especially the climate and the world we live in today. You're right. I mean, anything is possible. You don't know what people are thinking, and perhaps this panel of jurors is very far removed from your regular media, and they are not per se so enthralled with the whole racism and perhaps making their decisions strictly based on the evidence. But even if you go with just the evidence, and the McMichaels had said that there were a series of break-ins that led them to feel that he was potentially, coming off of a break-in or whatnot. Police said that there was no reports that were filed regarding these alleged break-ins. So again, you have the McMichaels thinking they're greater than God. They bring in their neighbor who basically assists them in this fiasco, and a man's life is lost. And for me to see this play out in a quiet neighborhood feels very racially charged, because nothing like that had ever happened in that neighborhood, so to speak. So yeah, this is quite disturbing, to say the least. It's one of the cases that, I'm reading more and more about, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is where we've ended up. It's very sad. It's very disheartening.
Yeah, no, and Zen, it really shows also the sort of differences in the nation. I'm sitting here in New York City with Fifth Avenue down there. This case, if it happened up in New York City, would play out in a tremendously different way. The jury makeup would be different. Sort of social norms and perceptions and biases would be different. So we will have to see how it plays out. But that is the essence of our country, the jury trial and our Constitution and our justice system, which I will always say is the best in the world. When the jury speaks, the jury speaks. Sometimes we are not happy, but we will see how this plays out in court, Zen.
Without a doubt, we're going to see. I hope justice is served in this case. I don't like to take sides. I like to let these scandal segments speak for themselves, the same way that I was advocating for Britney Spears to be freed, and she finally did. In this particular case, when you have racial comments within the courtroom, and you have individuals pointing out dirty toenails, when a post-mortem examination showed Mr. Arbery had 2 gunshot wounds in his chest and a gunshot graze wound on the inside of one of his wrists, and that's what she's talking about. This person's mother is in the courtroom. Very insensitive, Imran.
And Zen, his mother walked out with those comments, and we as lawyers, we're wordsmiths. We choose our words very wisely. It's part of our profession. So you can't say that the words used during summation and also during the course of this trial by some of those defense attorneys were not calculated and chosen and thought through. And they do have that sort of connotation, which is very surprising in the context of this trial.
Yeah, definitely. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on. It's always a pleasure having you. In this particular case, I am going to take a minute and pay respect to Ahmaud Arbery, because his life ended too soon, regardless of what he was doing and where he was going. He was outmanned, outpowered, and bullied by people that were equipped with guns. And for me, it's kind of pick on someone your own size, so to speak, so I will take a minute to acknowledge his life. And hopefully the decision will bring justice, because justice has to be served in this case.
Absolutely, Zen. Any loss of life is a tragedy, and here we really do have a tragedy. We will see if justice is served.
Yeah, unarmed. This is such a tragic story. You guys are listening to A Moment of Zen. That was Imran Ansari, partner at ABK Law, right here in New York City. That was the Scandals segment. We'll be right back after this. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WR, the voice of New York.